Greetings friends, it's me Wayman, and this is a video on why I am not an atheist. So I know I'm being like probably Britt Kane, uploading hundreds of videos in a day. This is just two for me. I was listening to an NPR broadcast on stereotypes last month, and something clicked in my pea brain uh, where I found myself on why I did not uh, resort to atheism. And it was great because it was kind of like one of those uh, little breakthroughs and aha moment that you sometimes get. And back when I left fundamentalism, um, I ended up joining an online support group uh, on fundamentalism and uh, talked about my experiences and things. Oh, I was burning. I was burning up until the day I realized I was an anti-fundamentalist fundamentalist. And then I started doing a huge research project on fundamentalism itself and what that was. So I educated myself on it. Also, because I was in fundamentalism, I knew the terminology. And then, as I said before, Joseph Campbell, reading some of the psychologists that came out of that, uh, Carl Jung and people like that. Also reading books on Native American religion, things like that. Uh, I was doing that uh, even before I left, studying Native Americanism. And I kind of, when I discovered I was an anti-fundamentalist because I was burning up, I kind of wanted to take the religious people to task. And I vowed that I would know what they knew and even more. So I studied biblical archaeology, started reading scholars, and it was very helpful. One of my good friends, I'll try to get him on here sometime, Richard, would loan me books because he was doing the same exact thing. And in college, uh, we lost a debate to the Baptists just because of lack of education. Um, so then we decided to educate ourselves, and it just blew up from there. So when I discovered I was an anti-fundamentalist, this was before YouTube. Uh, YouTube started coming on, came on YouTube, and what I found in the atheist community was that it seemed to me, at least the people I was watching, weren't all that educated about religion as they should have been, and biblical history as they should have been, in order to answer some of these things. Mostly they were doing emotional responses to um, Christians that were just as extreme. I didn't want to be a part of that. Been there, done that. I wanted people to listen to me. So I guess what it was, and what this broadcast said, I'll post a link to it, and you can listen to it. It was a stereotype threat that I was afraid of. I didn't want to be associated as an atheist in amongst that community, which believers would automatically stereotype me as somebody who was extreme and less confident. I wanted them to not know, so I could go on both parties without the stereotype threat or the fear of stereotype threat. And I think, as the article talks about, women face this in science. Uh, that was my whole reason why I went agnostic. So when I'm with atheists, I find that other atheists are a lot more confident than they are with talking to religious people. That burns me up. They should be just as confident and even more, but somehow they're not. And I found that people who cross over uh, are more confident with religious people, or ones that came out of religion. like Bart Ehrman and some others who were in the belief system, went through the whole thing, and were scholars within it, and then went the other way. So now they got both sides of the story, and they know the lingo and everything. So that's why I still read theology books and things like that, because I want to remain confident in both of those. So both communities will listen to me. And the only way that I could figure out how to do that was to label myself as an agnostic, even though I would identify more with probably atheism, but in a way I think it's gotten better. But still there's that lack of religious study in the atheist community. It was very encouraging to see the atheist experience some time back on the I watched a show, I favored it, some of my favorites, on the historical Jesus, and the commentators there who did that show came right out and talked about that, talked about the education gap sometimes. But not everybody's into this sort of thing as a hobby. And even believers find it fascinating that as a non-believer I would study theology and biblical literature just as much as them. But it's not only Hebrew literature and Christian literature. It's I try to do a lot too, and I mix and match when I go in and talk. So what I wanted to do was to understand where they were coming from. And when I started understanding and studying fundamentalism, I realized it was just a retaliation to secular things that were going on that they viewed as threatening to their cultural group or to the belief system, and so they would create laws. My home, my family never had a TV. My sister had to wear dresses. She couldn't wear pants, things like that. And there were all these strict laws. But after a while, they had a hard time explaining them. Nobody really knew why they were originally created, and people kind of forgot the reason why, and they tried to tie that to a biblical reason rather than a cultural reason, and they forgot that it was in retaliation to things that were going on at a certain time period, and those things never changed to keep up with the culture. So you had a gap, a gap where you couldn't have TV, but now you have computers, and people are allowed to watch movies on computers. It's hilarious. They just didn't keep up, and they lost it. So understanding that helped me identify with and even appreciate some of the ideas that my parents had, and because I know why they have them, and I don't feel at all terrible or uncomfortable, going to a church service, because I know how deeply it penetrates through lives and how effective it is in their lives. And also, I believe that if I was atheist, I would have to hold to a lot of atheist ideas that I absolutely did not identify with. I believe there are some benefits in religions. Just from studying Native American religions, it was religion itself that combined those communities to help them through the forced assimilation process. When the United States tried to force assimilate tribes, it was religion that saved the cultural identity. And so I looked at that and I compared it to other cultures, and it almost was the same across the board on why people double down and buckle down on religion when they feel threatened. And you see it happening in government today. So once I kind of understood that, and abstract expressionism, all these types of things, I realized there was more things balled up into it than what at that current time the atheist community believed. And I didn't want to be associated with that. So even though at some points I identified with it, other points I did not. So stereotype threat was the reason why. So I like the idea of going to the fair, going to the Baptist tent, getting that free cup of coffee they get out as proselytizing, and sitting down, having a cup of coffee with them, and having some really good discussions, and then having them find out that I'm a non-believer. So that's why I identify with the term agnostic, because it shields me from a lot of different things, from a lot of both sides that I would not care to be associated with. So I don't know, maybe that's an explanation or something. I'm on my second cup of coffee, still waking up. But take care, friends. Remember, if everybody's thinking alike, then somebody isn't thinking.